So I was actually asked to give a lecture that I gave last year during the first month, kind of like a highlight of the residency and Kings County and what to expect. It's mostly for the interns, but also some points for the residents. But with the new lecture series for attending advice, I wanted to update it a little bit and actually flesh out one of the other topics that many of you have heard me talk about, but maybe not lecture out before. And I see Dr. Fish smiling at me already. So I wanted to go over some of the same things I did last year. So there might be a little bit of overlap if you heard me talk last year. But same thing to kind of gear towards the new interns, especially a little bit about the history of the institution here a tiny bit, things to kind of expect, and a topic that is kind of near to me about developing grit, because I think that this is something that you can do and accomplish while you're here at residency, and it will not only give you success through residency to become whatever it is that you're going to develop into, but also to carry forward to accomplish your goals as an attending in the future. And I think this is where we really succeed as a residency program and why I think our program is so good. So this is going to be kind of how to handle Kings County, developing grit. And this is kind of the post-COVID update edition, right? So why do I bring that up? So just to start from the very beginning, on behalf of the residency leadership, we have to admit something to the new intern class. You know, there's only a little bit ago, you're either rotating with us or you're here on interview day, and we looked you right in the eye and we said, you know, if you train here, it's going to be high volume, it's going to be high acuity, it's going to be for an underserved population, and it's going to be full of patients, and there's going to be huge wait times, and the hallway's going to be totally packed, and it's going to be frustrating. You have to roll up your sleeves and really get down and dirty. You're going to not have the resources needed to do it, but at the end, you're going to be grizzled. You're going to be ready to handle everything in the world. And it's sort of a good news, bad news situation, but we kind of lied a little bit. But the good news is because we fixed it all already for you, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. I mean, the waiting areas, they're massive, they're open. We don't even need them anymore. I think we're just going to tear them all down because the patients can just walk right in the front door back to the emergency department. Now, no, you know, the longest wait times in the city, I can't even remember those times anymore. It seems like a long time ago. And staffing shortages, I mean, nursing ratios, now we have 1 patient to 2 nurses. I can't even remember the last time I had to find a PCT to do my EKG because they're always just done instantly. And blood draws, I don't even know if I can find blood supplies anymore because all my labs are just done and run the moment I put them in the computer. Look at those floors. I mean, you can see a reflection in those. I mean, they're just a figment of the past, these 3-day boarding times. Patients go straight upstairs to their beds. So pretty much everything's completely fixed now. And I am confident that it will be like this probably forever. But in the off chance that maybe I'm wrong, I am just going to go over a little bit about what things kind of were like in case it goes back that way in, I don't know, like 7 days or so. Just a quick little asterisk about this. I'm going to be referring mostly to Kings County, but it's really applicable to both SUNY Downstate and Kings County Hospital. Just for ease of the presentation and for some historical references, it just made more sense for me to just focus on Kings County, but it really does apply to both sides of the street. And also to keep in mind, this really is just my sort of opinion on certain things, backed up with some science. But it's important to know who I am if you don't really know who I am. And just to be completely transparent, I mean,
I can't see your screen.
can't see my screen.
Sorry guys, 1 second.
Just to be completely transparent, I really love Kings County. I really hate Zoom.
I am with you. I think we're good now.
We're good now, all right. And just to kind of put it out there on how much I love Kings County, it may be like a little bit of a problem. This is actually a shelf of a lot of the things I collect in terms of history and memorabilia of Kings County and SUNY Downstate. And there's maps and postcards and old press photos, and even recently I managed to get the silver trowel that commemorated the 100-year anniversary of the hospital. So pretty insane, I know. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. But why do I have this love? And it just comes from how much history there really is with this institution. I mean, it all actually started back in the 1820s. There was a government state mandate that the cities and counties should set aside a parcel of land specifically dedicated for kind of managing the poor and the underprivileged in the community, and the surrounding neighborhoods would be taxed to actually support all their efforts. And it had really minimal oversight by the government. It was really up to the local governments and the cities to establish whatever this meant and to be successful with it. And actually some decades later, the state senator came by for basically a site visit, almost like a modern day JCO visit, to see what it was that Kings County in Brooklyn did. And so actually in 1830, this is a picture of the Brooklyn Alms House. This was the initial home for the poor that was developed on the parcel of land that Kings County Hospital now sits. But a year later, in 1831, an actual building was erected, which became the Kings County Hospital, as well as a building for essentially the Kings County Psychiatric Asylum. And there's some interesting information you can get from historical documents, but especially there's some accounts of the psychiatric asylum. You know, at the time, the mainstay of therapy for psychiatric care was straitjackets and restraints. And what the state senator found was actually there was no use of straitjackets or restraints at the asylum because the doctor in charge of it felt that it probably would be healthier if the patients could roam around and interact with each other and exercise. And it was really groundbreaking. So even from the very beginning, back in the 1800s, there was this concept of this entire place was dedicated toward the community and advancing care and doing what was right for the neighboring community. And I think that that spirit is really carried forth almost, 200 years now, 190 years. But unfortunately, when there is a long history at any place, it's hard to say that everything's always perfect, right? There's always going to be sadder stories and times where we slip up. And sometimes we lose sight of that. And maybe we don't do the best for our patients in the community, right? And it's bound to happen. But I've seen how we can bounce back. I've seen the resilience of the hospital system and everyone joining together to fix this. And it's important to remember that because it's not always going to be a straight shot to the goals of what you want and what an institution wants. But as long as you can be resilient and bounce back from it, and if we can remember why we're doing this in the first place, we can overcome all those issues and do what's right for our population. And this is no truer than the creation of our own emergency department and our residency. This was born out of the need to do better for the community because we weren't doing a good job in the field of emergency medicine. And the interns got to hear about the history of the department firsthand from Dr. Lucchese on Monday. I always love hearing that story every year, because you hear about the story of the medical cowboys coming in, trying to stake a name as the first department in New York City with our brand new residency, everyone with chips on their shoulders, going in, resuscitations, traumas. And then over time, now in the past 25 years, how we've slowly developed our character and our culture in the residency to focus on adding academics and research and developing now our own proverbial clinical monsters that we produce every year at graduation when we complete this residency. And why do we do this all? This is all rooted in our people, our population. This is always the higher purpose of training of the hospitals in general. And you're just our new interns and you're just going to be in this community for the first time. You'll see how amazing the people are and how much they deserve and why we always have to keep striving to be better and achieve these lofty goals and to overcome any barriers or hiccups that get placed in our way. So that sounds great, right? What am I talking about? Handling Kings County? This is like a wonderful place, right? I mean, how could I even have to give you any advice about how to deal with such a beautiful situation? Well, let me take off my rose-tinted glasses for a moment, which is hard for me to do. And let's just highlight some of the potential frustrations you're going to encounter here. I mean, after all, this actually is not a glamorous job. You're going to work on shift and it's going to be dirty. There's going to be a number of bodily fluids and things you'll come in contact with. You're not always going to get a lot of press for it. I mean, we kind of did in recent memory, but that'll fade away. And you're not going to maybe get the recognition that maybe you actually deserve. And you're going to have to be okay with that. And while you're down there in the trenches, this is what that waiting room will look like. There'll be long wait times. There'll be tons of patients coming in and you'll be stocking them in the hallways, boarding patients, frustrated patients. You'll barely be able to move around some days. And you can sometimes lose sight of why you're actually there because it's so hard to even get one task done that it completely derails you. And then it'll kind of strike you. I mean, it's not really no resources, but there'll be a time where you'll come across a situation where you'll think, man, if I just had an extra nurse, an extra tech, I could just find a freaking bag of tuna fish sandwiches to feed my patient. And you'll start to question, really, can you accomplish the goal of taking care of these patients with the situation that you're given? And amidst all this, I mean, you can maybe see this as positive or negative, but as you're trying to take care of sick patients, you'll have patients coming in who just really don't have good access to care on the outside. And you'll feel frustrated because although you can see them here, you might not be able to get them into the appointments that they need. You'll have to be their primary care doctor, which is going to slow up the care for everybody else and maybe not get them the care that they truly need in the future. So it can be kind of frustrating. And you might then think, well, that's what it's going to be like. Why should I even put up with going through residency here in the first place? So there's a metaphor that I created last year for this lecture. And I apologize to the EMI and interns because Dr. Schechter relayed this metaphor during your interview day. But I want to repeat it because I think it's just my viewpoint on the benefits of this particular residency and why it'll come out strong. So I like to compare our residency to blacksmithing. And if you don't know how a blacksmith creates anything, essentially, let's say a blacksmith wants to create a knife. He starts with a piece of solid bar stock, a good piece of steel, but it's soft. It's something that you can shape. And the blacksmith will put that into the fire and get it up to a high heat, and then he'll pound it with his hammer on his anvil and slowly start to shape and move that metal. And he'll then throw it back in the fire when it cools off and repeat this again. And so the cycle of heat, beat, repeat kind of continues until he feels that the shape is exactly the way that he wants it. And once it's shaped, he heats it up one final time, and he quenches it in oil, and you get a hardened blade, a hardened knife that's ready to be achieving its true potential. And it's not complete. You still have to polish it and sharpen the blade and put a handle on it. But essentially, the heart and soul of that blade is created through that forging process. And that's what residency at SUNY Downstate in Kings County really is. You are all that starting piece of material that we know we can create something great out of it. And you're going to be thrown into the fire. And you're going to be thrown directly into the frying pan and directly into the thick of it in the emergency departments. And you're going to come across situations where there's going to be struggles and there's going to be roadblocks, as well as successes and achievements. And each one of those is going to be something that's going to really hit you and it's going to shape you a little bit. And each time you're going to continually be tested and thrown back in the fire and shaped again until at the very end, when you graduate, you will be this hardened, steely doctor ready to accomplish anything. And you'll still need to polish some of your rough edges and you'll need to sharpen your skills and you'll have to be able to figure out how to handle certain situations. But at the very base of it, you will have your foundation set from how you were shaped in residency. And this program, I think, really excels at that. And that's why I think it's the greatest training program in the country. It's through this exposure to potential difficulties and pitfalls. It's the ability for you to push through it, to shape yourself, and then allow you to use that foundation to kind of refine your own practice as you become an attending until the end of your career. So how do we do that? There's a lot of different ways, but the thing that I like to focus on is grit. I think it's something that our program really empowers our residents to develop if you haven't already. And I think it's why so many of our residents accomplish so much in the future and have so much success throughout residency as well as attendings. And this is well studied. I mean, what is grit though? It is the concept of having perseverance and passion toward a long-term goal. It's the concept that you set your eyes on something and you're going to get there no matter what it takes. And you're not going to lose sight of what it was that you wanted to accomplish in the first place. And there's a sister term for this called resilience, which is more focused on how you bounce back from setbacks as you're trying to achieve your goal. And you really can't have one without the other. You can imagine you can't really persevere and achieve your long-term goals if you can't bounce back and be resilient from a hiccup in the situation. And by the same token, you can't be expected to bounce back from something if you don't truly have a passion to push forward and achieve the goal that you initially set out for. And this residency will give you opportunities to actually develop this. I mean, there are twin studies that show there is some heritability and genetic component, almost like a personality trait to grit in people and everybody, but you can actually develop this. You can develop your grit, you can grow it, and you can actually train your resilience. And it's not that hard to do. It's just a matter of kind of focusing on and believing in it. And by doing that, you can actually accomplish your goals and set yourself up to always persevere, both in residency, but whatever it is that you want to achieve in your own careers and even in your own personal lives. And you don't even need to go to the Mayo Clinic and get official courses on this. It's things that you can do yourself, but you're already in a residency that can help you train for this. So specifically this year, I wanted to go over some of the things you can do to grow your own grit. And it's based off of a lot of research by Angela Lee Duckworth. She's kind of the foremost expert on this. She wrote a book on it. There's tons of talks that she gives on it. But if you're not really in a reading mood or a researching mood, one of our chiefs last year, Delma John, gave her senior lecture, actually based on her work on grit and growth mindset and resilience. So I highly recommend that if you're kind of interested in this after I talk about it, maybe in addition to looking up Angela Duckworth, maybe you can find Delma's lecture and give it a quick listen and hear what you have to say about it. So these are 5 things that I want to bring up that you can do to grow your grit and how this residency can allow you to do that. These are really based on research by her and other experts in the field, as well as sort of different things that I found helpful in my own practice throughout residency and currently what I do as an attending to make sure that I'm continuously trying to grow my grit and my ability to achieve my goals at that level. So these are the 5. We'll go through one by one with some personal and specific examples. And the first one is to pursue your interests. And the good news is, to a large extent, a lot of you are already pursuing your interests. You are pursuing emergency medicine residency, become an emergency medicine doctor. And that's a great goal to achieve. And I truly believe by you all going through medical school and going through residency that you're going to be able to develop some grit because you really want to achieve this goal. But throughout your time in residency in your career, you also have to keep focusing on other interests. And if you're just taking tasks that you're not really interested in, it's hard to get them done, and it's hard to grow your ability to actually want to achieve goals and to follow through and complete them. So you have to keep redefining yourself, reinventing yourself, thinking about what it is you're interested in, and signing up for those projects. By doing that, you will give yourself the ability to succeed and grow your grit and improve your resilience. But it's not enough to just have interest. You need to understand the higher purpose to it all. We all know the higher purpose. We're here to take care of the community, and it's everything I talked about, but it's easy to lose track of that sometimes in your career, especially during residency when you're first starting to learn how to do all of this. I mean, you're going to meet some unsavory characters during your shift. They're going to frustrate you. They're not going to thank you. They're going to sap all of your time. They're going to frustrate you. And sometimes it can take just one patient interaction or one bad consultant interaction, and it steamrolls your entire shift. And you might go home and you might not think you accomplished anything that day, and you wonder what was the point of doing any of that in the first place. So you have to keep reminding yourself about what the higher purpose is of the goal you're trying to achieve. And in terms of becoming an amazing clinical monster and emergency medicine doctor, you have to focus on those patients that you can remember and remind yourself that this is the reason why we do it all. So for me, it's usually the little old lady. They're always really thankful, they're really cute. They're just there to see you, and they're usually very thankful for everything that you did for them during your shift. For somebody else, it might be the cute little baby that you got to see and give a well checkup for, or manage their sniffles, or whatever it is. Or the ultimate combo, the cute old lady baby. But whatever it is, find those patients, remember those patients you saw during your shift that actually were rewarding to you. It's easy to forget about them if you had a bad shift or a bad interaction or a bad outcome, But don't go home and focus on just the negative. Remember the positive and remember your higher purpose of why you do this. And you can always find those patients during your shift that you feel really great that you got to meet and you got to treat. So you have to be interested. You have to have an understanding of the higher purpose of what you do, but you also have to practice it. It doesn't just happen just by showing up, clocking in and clocking out. You have to practice. And it's not just about practicing. You have to have deliberate practice. So this is an example in sports of deliberate practice of two athletes who want to become better shooters. And they kind of give you both players and they give you examples of what they do to practice. And this is the difference between player A doing deliberate practice and player B just doing practice, unstructured. Right? They could both practice 100 hours, but this is set up to be very obvious. But player A is going to have more success being a better shooter in the same amount of practice time that player B had. And you have to bring this into your goals as a physician. And during residency, there'll be things that you need to work on. And it's not good enough to just come in and maybe practice it. You have to really investigate it and figure out how it is you can practice better, study your results, fix it to get to the outcome that you want. So for me during residency, especially in my first 2 years, I had a terrible time finishing my notes on time. And judging by Dr. Holt's email, I think a lot of other people have that same problem still, basically. Remember to finish your notes, by the way. So what did I do? In my third year of residency, I really started to do deliberate practice during my shifts. I set caps for how many notes could be left undone before I could pick up another patient. And when I hit that threshold, I had to take time to start doing some notes to get back below my trigger point. When I was ready to discharge a patient, if I hadn't finished their initial note, I would have to do the initial note first before I could discharge them. And a few other tips and tricks that I could always go over if you have that same problem as me. And that really helped me as a resident. And I didn't have these long stretches of staying after shift an hour and a half, 2 hours just to finish my notes. And then, of course, I became an attending and I got 60 to 80 notes assigned after each shift. And it was terrible again. And I'm still trying to practice and get better again at it. But you have to have that actual mindset and focus on what you're going to do to improve it. If I just came into shift and thought it was just going to figure itself out just by working enough that it was going to fix itself, it's not going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, you'll lose that drive to try to get it done. So you have to have deliberate practice instead of a deliberate plan to accomplish what you want. So the fourth thing is that you could have all the greatest intention in the world and the best practice plan, but if you don't believe you can actually do it, you're never going to accomplish anything. And this is the biggest sap to developing grit and resilience, in my opinion. Especially with burnout, this is really where burnout affects your ability to accomplish what you want. You're going to have situations where there's bad patient outcomes. You feel like you're behind your peers. Things outside of work are happening that are just affecting your ability to work. And you might start questioning yourself. Can I actually do it? Can I become that clinical monster? Will I be the exception to the rule where they graduate somebody who doesn't meet the standards that they're setting out? And this is where wellness really comes in. It's really important to be really highlighted here in the residency, because if you're not well, if you don't think that you can accomplish it, then you won't. And there's a phrase that a lot of grit literature talks about. It's cultivating hope. You have to actually think that not only can you do it, but that the situation's achievable, and there's hope that it can actually be the way that you want. So a large part of that is making sure that you're well in all dimensions of wellness, not just at your job, but also emotionally and socially, and all the 8 dimensions of wellness. And that's going to be individualized for you. And it's important to make sure that you're always doing constant checks on yourself, that you are feeling well, that you can stay positive, and not hurt your own self in achieving the goals that you set out for. But it's also important to have a certain global mindset, other than just your own personal wellness. And I'm sure we've all heard and understand the concept of the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. But I want to credit my father, who imparted a little special wisdom to me some years ago. And he actually has a different take on that saying. He says it's not about whether or not the grass is greener over there, or if the grass is greener where you're standing, as you grow, you start to learn there really is no green grass. It's all little patches of brown everywhere. Now, I know it doesn't sound very positive, right? It's not really an optimistic saying for my optimism part of my talk here, but really what he was trying to tell me is that there is no perfect, there is no perfection. There's always little flaws and little mars everywhere. And that includes with our own personal self. There is no ideal perfection that you can ever really achieve because we all are human. And when you realize that and you realize that every situation can't be exactly perfect and your own development and your own person can't be perfect, if you really buy into that, then that's how you really cultivate hope. Because then every little patch of brown grass that you hit is just a normal patch of brown grass. And you can overcome that and you can have that hope that you can achieve what you're setting out to do. And then last, grit and success, it rubs off. It's important to surround yourself with grit, with people who are resilient. Seeing what they are doing, and maybe even more importantly for me, hearing the old stories, hearing where people have come from and hearing how they achieved what they wanted in the field of emergency medicine and beyond will inspire you and will give you tips and tricks and will empower you to do the same exact thing. And here in this residency, we have tons of these gritty people, more than I can even put on a slide, to be honest. And you're gonna be working alongside them every day. And you can learn a lot, especially from the attendings and the faculty that have been in the field of emergency medicine and in our institutions for a long time. They have been through it all in way rougher situations. They had to create things from scratch. Work with them, see how they do things, talk to them, hear the stories, hear where we came from, hear about the history of where we've been and how we had screwed up before and how we overcame it. See how they've been resilient. Test their concept of grit and how they accomplished it. And you'll learn a lot and it will make you be better with it too. I try to do this all the time and it really helps me. And it's more that I just do have that love and that interest about where we came from, but it's really so that I can build on that foundation since I didn't have a chance to be here in the beginning and not lose sight of where we came from and still use that as the building block for what we try to do to accomplish here in residency and as a hospital for our community. So in summary, this place is great. And I hope you really develop that same passion for it that I do. You don't have to stay here the rest of your life like I'm hopefully planning to do, but I want you to really feel proud of what this institution stands for in our community and what you can accomplish here. There's going to be frustrating days. Everything we did tell you during interview day and on your rotation, it is true. It will come back to exactly that way, probably pretty soon. All the extra nurses are leaving this week, so it might start sooner than you think. But this residency will get you to where you want to be through those trials and tribulations by developing grit. So focus on that. I think it's important to think about it, and you can carry it forward to your future wherever you go. If you develop your grit in residency, it will allow you to accomplish your goals and be resilient to bounce back from setbacks in your attending career. So remember to always pursue your interests, both in residency and afterwards. Remember the higher purpose. Find the higher purpose. If you can't find a higher purpose, it might not be worthwhile. It's not going to allow you to achieve your goals. Practice, but be deliberate in your practice. Find those exact things that you need to do to achieve what you want. Cultivate hope, be positive, believe in yourself, be well, and remember that we are all human. You're going to make mistakes along the way, and that should not be a barrier to you achieving what you need to do to achieve your goals. And surround yourself with grit. Find the people around you that exemplify what you're trying to do, who you're trying to grow into. It will rub off on you and you will learn. Does anybody have any questions about any of this? I know there's maybe not a lot, it's a lot of concept and theory.
That was great. I think one of the things that I've been helped by to keep going is one of the things that Martin Luther King said is keep your eye on the prize. Always know what your goal is, what you emphasize. You know, your goal is to be a really good doctor, but your goal is to take care of patients. And learn from your mistakes, but don't dwell on them. Because you're going to make mistakes, but you'll learn from them. That's the best way to learn. And finally, the good things that you do, remember them. And they're the things you should dwell on. And every day, you'll do good things. And you'll remember that.
Yeah, Dr. G says what's helped him throughout his career is that he remembers to keep his eye on the prize and reminds him what his goals are. He learns from his mistakes but does not dwell on them, but tries to dwell on all those positives because that's what pushes him forward. So just leave you just one quote that I like, especially for the interns as you start to work clinically. Just remember to do as much as possible for the patient and as little as possible to the patient. And I think if you follow this mantra, you'll always do the right thing for your patients. So just keep that in mind. So thank you guys.